think a version of me that needed to die was the people pleaser in my piece. Did not say no when I needed to say no because I want to keep everyone happy all the time. It's just unfortunately or fortunately who I am as a human. So I had to let go of that version of me and realize that there's a cost to saying yes to everything, both personally and professionally. And I just leaned into a 2.0 version of myself, which I feel like is a lot more sustainable, healthy, in all possible ways. I love being a dad. I love being a husband. I love being an entrepreneur. And, you know, if you are just working and lighting the candle at both ends and there's no sustainability to that, you know, there's no real, it just doesn't make sense for me to have no balance to your life and no sustainability in all possible ways. So I knew before I started that even if it failed, I would continue to work on the business and iterate and figure out what works decisions, knowing that, you know, when you are trying to innovate in any industry, that the likelihood of failure is very high. But my tolerance for pain is quite high, and it was painful. I lost 3 or 4 million rand in both of those businesses. Yeah, it was tough. But again, I mean, you learn in these things, and the cost of innovation is sometimes getting it wrong once or twice.
Welcome to Founder Real Talk, honest conversations about what it really takes to be a founder. Today, there's Murray Clark with me, the serial entrepreneur and co-founder of the Neighborgood. So let me introduce you shortly, and then you can also pick it up if you want to add something. Like, it's always like really interesting to see like how certain people want to be perceived, even, you know, even the word serial entrepreneur, some people don't like it.
And I don't even have time to think about how I'm being perceived.
All right, I'm going to introduce you. So you started your first business very early, and you didn't come from a lot of money, I read, but you have built many ventures, lost many ventures, burned millions, rebuilt yourself, which is quite honorable more than once. And today, like two decades later, 39 you are, right? You're leading Neighborgood, which is a 1,300 unit community-led living platform here in all over the country in South Africa, but also in America. And yeah, you built alongside your wife, Kim.
That's right.
Yes, you are a father of a beautiful daughter and of an amazing dog.
A 3.5-year-old son. And we also
Oh,
have a
sorry.
co-founder. Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
He's
okay.
so pretty that he looks like a girl.
Okay, I'm sorry. A
Don't
son
be
and
sorry.
a dog, yes. And
And a coach
yeah,
as well. There's 3 of us.
there's 3 of us. Okay, perfect. And yeah, like what I could find about you is that you really like think deeply about responsibility, about legacy, and about sustainable growth, especially here in South Africa. So very welcome. Happy to have you here, Murray.
Thank you
And
for having me. I appreciate it tremendously. My
yes,
dog's in the room, so he might knock and ask to be part of this. So if he does, I'll bring him up and introduce him to your audience.
what's his name again? Archie,
This
right?
is Archie, yeah, and
Yeah.
he's the chief marketing officer of Neighbourgood.
Well, perfect, perfect. Probably like the love magnet, happiness magnet. Yeah.
He is.
Indeed.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. No, like I'm always like thinking, or like probably how people see you today, like, you know, like it's a lot of momentum, a lot of scale, especially with Neighborgood. I mean, you've seen it all over here in the city already. There's so many different locations, but probably it was not as glamorous like in the years before. And yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what kept you going, and like when did you like decide, okay, no matter what, I'm gonna push through, or I'm gonna make it? Like, what gave you that drive? Yeah.
So there's been I've had lots of seasons, like
Yeah.
Bridgerton. You know, I think
Yeah.
what season is it now? I think it's season 6. So I've had lots of seasons myself.
Mm.
Um, and you know, in the beginning, we started. I mean, I was 17 or 18 when I first started a business, and that was an under 18 nightclub, which didn't last very long, 2 weekends, until we got shut down. And so my entry into property was um, by default trying to solve a problem because I had a lease agreement and no income that I had to solve for. And we ended up finding a tenant called Curves Gym that we put into the building. And, that was essentially my first property deal when I was 17 or 18. I went to law school for a year and a half and dropped out. I would have been a terrible lawyer, and started selling houses when I was 18 or 19. And the property bug hit, or the real estate bug hit. Um, I was very influenced by my late father, who was a builder. And he had lots of ups and downs himself, and struggled, not just financially, but in life. He probably drank a little bit too much, and didn't take care of himself. My mom was at home trying to, take care of a family of three or four. So she had a really difficult job as well. And so, yeah, I think when you don't come from a lot of capital or a lot of money, you learn to fight a lot harder, and you learn to figure things out. And um, I guess I had a chip on my shoulder from being dropped off at school, and seeing other kids with fancier cars. And my dad had this old rust heap of a bucky or a
Mm.
van that used to get dropped off. And I really felt uncomfortable at school when I was in junior school, specifically because it was a private school, and we couldn't really afford to be there. And so I felt a lot more comfortable at high school, because I went to a public school called DHS, and it was a more accurate reflection of what South Africa is. And learned the value of team sports, and learned the value of being around good people in a setting which was a whole lot more inclusive. Yeah, I think seeing my old man, who was this builder in this real estate space, sort of gave me an entry point into what I wanted to do with my life. And real estate and building and development, was something that was really interesting. I mean, we all have these figures in our lives that influence who we want to be. Sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's someone you read in a book, sometimes it's your uncle or a friend. And so, yeah, the property bug hit early on, and that first deal sort of catapulted or propelled me forward into looking at real estate as a career, and thinking about it in a way that could give me the creativity I wanted, but also the cash flow and the potential value that would go together with it as an industry. We had to be really creative initially when we started doing deals.
Yeah.
When I say we, I mean me, basically, because we didn't come from money. So we
Yeah.
had to find ways to be creative and get people to leave their properties in the deal, and find ways for, in any real estate transaction, if you're acquiring a building, you need to find equity and you need to find debt. And the debt is always the easy part, but the equity is broadly speaking the hard part, especially when you're starting out, because you don't have a track record. So you're having to find a deal that makes financial sense, and you're having to convince investors or partners that they should be investing in you as a person. And when you're 19 or 20 years old, that's not that easy, right?
I was actually about to
Yeah.
ask, how did you get that first rent agreement by the age of 17? You were underage, probably it was not even in your.
Um, yeah, you legally actually I couldn't sign a contract until I was 18, but
Yes.
I went to school at the DHS, and the club that I rented this old cricket pavilion at it was something called DHS Old Boys Club. I had a relationship with the school because I was at school there, and
Yeah.
sort of I convinced them to rent me the building, and 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 that was the end of that. So maybe some beginner's luck, but yeah, I think those first few deals were pretty key to sort of shaping how we think about doing deals. There's no deal that we do now where there's not some sort of, we try and look at everything from a sort of 360 angle, not just properties, but business,
Oh,
in a way that helps create value from very little sometimes. And yeah, those first few deals were residential deals. I mean, it was pre 2008. So
yeah.
were debt was, people were raising money very easily relative to what it is like now,
Yeah.
because it was all the 2008 crash, and learned so much in those first couple of deals, building ground up construction projects at like in my early 20s. We didn't make a lot of money from them at all. In fact, I think we broke even at best. But I got the opportunity to build multi-family buildings over 2 or 3 years and understand how banks work and understand how customers work and building costs and feasibilities and all of those things. And unfortunately, my old man died when he like in the beginning stages of when we were starting off. He passed away. He had a heart attack. And on
Mm.
this, I remember on the that was on the Saturday. On the Monday morning, I was picking up staff on the way to a job that we were finishing, a construction job, thinking, wow, like now you've become an adult. Um, and it was like we all have these moments in life where you become an adult, right? Because something
Yeah.
happened, or you lose someone close to you, or something like that. And I think that was that time for me. I left being a teenager, and all of a sudden, I had to become an adult really quickly.
Yeah.
And at that point, we changed direction, and started looking at um, rural retail and shopping centers across South Africa.
Yeah.
And I started working with companies like Shoprite and Boxer and various others to help find them sites across SA. And off
Yeah.
the back of the lease agreements, we would raise debt. And so that's how we built sort of 40 or 50 shopping centers over about a 10 to 12-year period. And then when I turned 30, I really wanted to I didn't feel like developing shopping centers was giving me the sort of fulfillment that I
Mm.
wanted. I think
Yeah.
when you're in your 20s, you may be chasing a different goal.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about having a family with my now wife, and thinking about what's important in life and sustainability and creative freedom and all of these things. And I didn't really want to fast forward 20 or 30 years and be known for the guy who built nice shopping centers. That's not what you want in your tombstone, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's a
yeah,
choice.
who you asking? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we built a platform called Big Box at that point, which
Mhm.
was an entrepreneurial development platform where we would find, fund, educate, and mentor young entrepreneurs in townships. And it was made out of retrofitted containers. It was a really incredible experience where we were able to interact with entrepreneurs who were superstars from a township called Kwamashu in Durban. It didn't work financially, but it taught us a heck of a lot. That evolved into something called Good, where my wife and myself moved to Cape Town at the end of 2018, and that was where we felt the future of retail was going, and the future of community collective spaces. And it was a combination of a food hall, a co-work space, a health and wellness product, a cafe and a bar. And it was just too complicated as a product offering. It was a beautiful thing to see when you walked into the space, and design was on point, and the culture was there, but the business was just too complicated. And that wasn't a success. But both Big Box and Good, which were not successes, helped framed my mind for what we have built with Neighborgood, which has now become a success, which is a success inverted commas, because I don't really ever see what we're doing as complete, or anything like that. We're constantly trying to improve all the time. But yeah, over the last 6 years, we've built 1,300 units across 3 cities, across living and working spaces. And we're trying to reimagine what the future of living and working looks like in the world that we live in. And yeah, just it's been a really cool journey.
What gave you that courage in that moment when the other businesses failed? Like, I don't know, was there any kind of thoughts around, okay, I need to get a job, especially with the thinking about you want to start your family, so you should be the
Yeah.
provider. How did you, yeah, know
I'm
what
not
to do?
I'm not really made for employment, unfortunately. So I don't think there was ever a point where I thought, okay, I need to settle down and find a job, or I just have never really sit still, I guess. And before we started, we had been very successful in the shopping center space. So we were lucky enough to have a successful platform, or a successful business and capital assets that over time we sold, that gave me the ability to invest into what would be quite risky businesses in big box and good wood stock.
Yeah.
Um, and so I knew before I started that even if it failed, I would continue to work on the business and iterate and figure out what works. And I had made that decision before I started both decisions, knowing that when you are trying to innovate in any industry, that the likelihood of failure is very high.
Yeah.
So my tolerance for pain is quite high, and it was painful. I lost 3 or 4 million rand in both of those businesses. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's true.
yeah, yeah, it was tough, and it was tough to have to close a good Woodstock down. But again, I mean, you learn in these things, and the cost of innovation is sometimes getting it wrong once or twice. And I think we did that, and that helped reframe our thinking as we built Neighborgood. And it's a much more simple, uncomplicated business focused on living rather than on multiple things. Even though we have community and workspace, our primary product is, living for a short or a long time
Yep.
in a branded residential setting, underpinned by community at its core and trying to think about living in a way that it doesn't exist at the moment. If you think about housing, it is our biggest expense that we all have,
Yeah.
whether you're renting or buying a home. But as an industry, it's never evolved. Every other industry has evolved: mobility, finance, banking, all of it's evolved. But multifamily hasn't, or rental hasn't. Your experience as a customer extends only to the invoice that you may or may not receive once a month. And that is the end of your relationship until you hand your keys back at the end of it. So
Yeah.
I always felt that, given it's our biggest expense, surely we should get more for it. And surely the bar should move in terms of what you actually get as a client or as a customer. And so we wanted to remove the metaphoric walls between buildings and cities and create an all access passport to cities and neighborhoods where if you rent a home from us for a short or a long time, you have
Mm.
access to a workspace, health and wellness, community, loyalty, local area discounts, and all of those things. And
Yeah.
so that's how we're trying to think about the product that we're building now, moving away from hotels and more into sort of hybrid living spaces where you have access to so much more in the city for the same price.
What were your biggest doubts before you started that business? Like what did you see as the biggest challenge?
I think it's controlled by, I think real estate generally is controlled by generational property owners,
Mm.
and it's very stuck in its ways. You know, real estate is the world's biggest asset class, but it's exceptionally slow to change for a reason because it doesn't need to change, as far as the owner sees it. So I think probably the biggest challenge is actually just moving the needle in terms of how landlords need to evolve. But at the end of the day, customers dictate what happens. It doesn't matter what landlords want or don't want. The
Mm.
customer will ultimately define the product and the product selection. So the moment someone creates a new product, let's just look at Uber for taxis, the market will say, okay, I'm going to use this product now because the old product is redundant or incumbent. And
Yeah.
I feel the same for the future of living. I think people are generally going to, we expect more, our expectations are higher. We want to be more sustainable. We want a whole lot more. And so that's what's going to happen, we think, in a residential setting.
Yeah. You offer more value, yeah. And what would you say, as I'm always super interested in the person, like what version of you had to die in order to be able to build this business? I mean, you mentioned that you learned a
I
lot
think
from the other businesses, but what
I
did
was,
you
I think a version of me that needed to die was the people pleaser in my 20s. I did not say no when I needed to say no because I want to keep everyone happy all the time. It's just unfortunately or fortunately who I am as a human. So I
Yeah.
had to let go of that version of me and realize that there's a cost to saying yes to everything, both personally and professionally. And I just leaned into a, a 2.0 version of myself, which I feel like is a lot more sustainable, healthy in all possible ways. I love being a dad. I love being a husband. I love being an entrepreneur. And, if you are just working and lighting the candle at both ends. And there's no sustainability to that. There's no real, it just doesn't make sense for me to have no balance to your life and no sustainability in all possible ways. Even
Yeah,
as someone who loves work as much as I do, and really I do love, the
I do.
company that we're building and what we do. I love sitting in the bath with my son even more. And so that's something that I'm really happy with.
Okay, yeah. And do you make a difference between talking to someone in a business context versus, like,
You
probably
know,
with your wife is it's a different story because I don't know where the line is, but
yeah,
even sorry?
I'm a different human being. I'm like way softer, and
Yes.
at home I'm like, I mean, I'm always trying to have fun. Doesn't matter whether
Yeah.
it's at home or work. One of our values at Neighborgood is to have fun, and so I'm like constantly joking around, and because life is too short not to. But at home, I'm probably a heck of a lot softer than I am at work. I'll say something. We talk about clear being kind
Mm,
and unclear being unkind. And often people mistake kindness for weakness, and it's not the truth. You can be very kind and clear, and it can come off as quite hard,
yeah.
but it's actually not hard. It's just being honest. I mean, you can deliver honesty with kindness as well, which
Mm.
I try and do in every setting in difficult conversations and or otherwise. The 20s version of myself would have danced around questions and really cared a lot about letting someone down. And right, the person that I'm now, unfortunately, sometimes you've got to let people down. It is what it is.
Because it's often like what I've seen and like, like having talks to other entrepreneurs and like there has to be like a differentiation between, okay, this is a business partner and yes, of course, like you basically have a marriage as well, but still it's like there has to be like emotions have to be separate from, like the business goal
Yes.
to actually reach.
So Kim and I run different departments. Obviously, my role is more growth, and her role is brand and brand architecture. Ultimately, it's
Yeah.
tough. When you start a business with your wife or your husband, it is what it is. You're bringing it home at night. You can't change that. But to me, in this phase of our life right now,
Yeah.
I think we both were honest with each other and with ourselves that there was a phase that we were going to go through, and that phase and the benefit of it would then help our family.
Mm,
So the cons to me the pros outweigh the cons, because ultimately at the end of the day, building something with your partner can also be beautiful.
mm.
And so that's, ultimately what I like to think, and I think is the truth. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come with, you're talking about work a lot. When we come home, it is what it is. But in, 5 or 10 years time, or, God willing, if we get there and we decide to exit at any point or something like that, my ambition is to go and sit at coffee shops and read books, and I'll be absolutely fine with that. And we'll go
Yeah.
back to being a normal husband and wife.
Yeah.
I'm sure hers is the same in different ways.
And did you sit down and have like a co-founder contract anyways or not?
Well, I think we have a shareholder agreement like 5 years later, but only once we bought a new share. We brought on an investor last year for a minority share, and we'll probably do a Series B later in the year. But we never really had felt the need to initially. Probably a bit wet behind the ears, but we also trust each other a lot.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm talking from my own experience. I started the business with my ex and it did not work out and then it imploded. It was quite a
Oh no, sorry.
yes,
It is a risk.
there's a risk, yeah. But I learned the most, I have to say. So yeah. And of course no co-founder agreement. But even though like I mean it doesn't even matter at some point. But yeah. Um what would you say was like the hardest part of failure like with the other businesses before for you as a person?
And the responsibility, like I've worked hard for the capital that I've got on the balance sheet, and I think when you lose money on your own dime, which I think is the best dime to lose it on versus using investors, and the responsibility that comes with having teams and knowing I feel that responsibility every day with Neighborgood. And fortunately, we're not in a loss-making position now because we've really built a strong balance sheet and we have trajectory to, very healthy unit economics. But it's a responsibility leading the company, knowing that you've got 300 people relying on you. And so luckily, I take it with what it comes. It is what it is. But I would say that's probably like the most weight on my shoulders, just so that is one thing people pleasing, and there's another thing making sure that 250 employees are being paid on time and all of that. So
Yeah.
that's quite a big responsibility. And 250, as we get bigger and bigger, will become more. So that's the game that we're in.
Yeah. And with the business good, like when you basically, or like the business before Neighborhood, when you closed it down, like did you take a break, or like how did you communicate to your
Uh,
friends?
yeah, it was tough. So I mean,
Yeah.
we sat. We paid our staff for 3 months after it shut down, and we didn't have the money, to be quite honest. But we had to make a plan. I just felt like we had a responsibility. So we
Yeah.
had hard conversations when it was shut down with kindness. Luckily, my team were amazing then, and they're amazing now. I don't know. When you start a company, you go to battle with your team, and your co-founders and your initial employees, and I felt even back then with the team then like just such superstars. I would hire them again. The sort of people, and just simply because you sort of like galvanized as a unit. So yeah, I think that just taught me a lot. So
So
yeah,
how long did you take before you started the next venture? Like,
I mean, we went straight. Like I started thinking about Neighborgood as the evolution of good immediately.
mm,
In terms of when we were, because I knew that the principle around where the world of real estate was going was happening, whether or not I got it right.
yeah.
So I knew it was going to happen. It was just a question of when, and how. And so immediately as it was, I knew there were problems with that site. So it was in Woodstock, which has
Yeah.
social challenges. It was a food hall that relied heavily on feet, similar to OZC.
Mhm.
It was like maybe 2/3 of the income in total. When we took the components of it that worked, like our co-work space and the residential component and all of that, and we put it back together, the business became a lot less complicated. And so from the time that we shut it down, I was already working on site 2, 3, 4 in a different way, and we structured as initially as like an asset light platform, and then we opened Cape Quarter, and I found a great co-founder in a guy called St. John Gardner, or spelled St. John, and the three of us, my wife Kim and St. John, went to work again. It was probably like a month or two max, and then COVID happened,
Mm.
um, and
Why
so
did you
that,
decide to go for another person, like another co-founder?
his
Did
name is St. John. St.
yeah,
John Gardner.
why did you wanted to have like another one on board?
It's hard building a business. You need strong people. He's strong operationally, and I felt like we needed someone who could help on the upside of the business to give me some breathing space to focus on growth.
Okay, okay, yeah. And when you then first took like the first money, how does that feel if you basically again carry so much? I mean, it's like a lot of dough for you
Uh,
first.
the first one was an management agreement, so we didn't
Okay.
actually need capital. And the second one, we convinced the property owner. Sorry, the second one was the co-work space at Cape Quarter, where the landlord contributed the tenant fit out requirement. We didn't have money to hire a big property management team, so we actually outsourced the function of property management initially to a company called Brawl and Mafadi at the time. But
Mm.
slowly but surely, as we added on more sites, we could afford to employ our own people. We didn't pay ourselves at all for a long time until we got enough critical mass. So I had a construction company that I was running at the same time, still building shopping centers. So I was able to draw earnings from that for a long time until Neighborgood eventually became sustainable.
Okay. And then did they believe in you as a person, or in the vision of Neighborhood, or in the model, or like why did they trust you?
I believe in myself, and hopefully that wears off on other people. I think at the end of the day, yeah, I would say that like you've got to show a track record, which I
Mm.
had over 20 years. So even though there was a failure or two dotted in there, there was still like a strong history before that. What I can say is that the question still came. They were like, "Well, what happened to Goodwood stock? Why did it fail?" And so I had to answer that for a while. Once Cape Quarter was fully let and we started securing new sites, people forget, and then all of a sudden back on, and people only remember your last race, right? So yeah, I'm lucky enough to have been fairly successful since then.
Yes, and you've also been building in public. I mean, that's also I mean, like a lot of people are doing it today, but I guess it also puts a lot of pressure on you because you literally share what you do and it might not work. It might not.
My feeling is that like if the people out there who can learn from it, we have a scarcity mindset as South Africans,
Yes.
because we have a very difficult history, and so we are not often wanting to share and collaborate because we just the small amount of money that we make, we obviously need to provide, and so I think for us to sort of get out of that way of thinking, I like the idea of sharing and being open and honest because there are people out there who could learn from that.
Yeah,
And again, if you're only here for a short time on this earth, which is the reality of the situation, why not share?
that's true. No, that's really honorable, and I kind of believe that a lot of people actually they like already like the courage to kind of see, okay, wow, he can do it. Like that is
Um,
quite a big thing
I hope
nowadays. Yeah.
so.
Yes. Because what would you say, like, what's the biggest lie nowadays, like South African founders tell themselves about fundraising? Like, what have you come across here?
Um,
Um,
that there's no money available, probably. Yeah, I
yeah.
think that like one of the mill entrepreneur who's wanting to start something is generally got like victim mentality. And I'm not talking about superstar entrepreneurs who building, but most people who are, if I look at comments on TikTok
Hmm.
and, the reality is that like most people have a lot of people have a victim mentality where they will blame society or their circumstances for why things are not working. And I understand that. And we're all born into a different world. And some of us are luckier than others. But what?
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. So we're in the situation. Like, are you going to drink the glass full or is it going to be half full in terms of your mindset? So,
Yeah.
I think like South Africans need to back themselves and need to learn to like reframe their mindsets so that they can look in the mirror and believe in themselves and get ready for the long haul. Because when you invest in or when you start a business, it's not a 6 month affair, it's
No.
20-year journey that you go through and you've got to have enough resilience and persistence and you've got to love it enough to stick with it. It's not for everyone, but for those lucky few who have a thick enough skin and enough confidence in themselves and, an industry that they love, whether it's a product or a service or whatever it might be, um, the sky's really the limit, in any possible way.
Yeah. Did you have any mentors who kind of like supported you when you were struggling with your thoughts?
Really, I mean, I think the bulk of the business I built was after my old man passed away.
Yeah.
I read a heck of a lot, so like I'm always like reading biographies and stories and things like that. So there's a lot of people in the world where I've been able to gain knowledge, unfairly from books.
Yeah.
But there's no one in particular that comes to mind where I'm like, wow, this is someone. I mean, obviously in a cliched way, I love how much fun Richard Branson has and the stupid things that he does. He doesn't take himself that seriously, and I see that in myself as well. Not necessarily the entrepreneurial stuff, but more
Yeah.
just having fun and bringing fun to the world and love to the world. And my wife has been a constant through all of it. So I would say that although she's not necessarily a mentor, she's certainly a pillar of support. Yeah, needed most. You need these things as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Probably she understands it the best because she knows exactly what you talk about. Or at least like she's like in it. Yeah. And would you say like you that you cut on like lifestyle or maybe I mean like friends or like you had to let like what was the cost that came with your decision to be that entrepreneur?
Man, I've
What
always been a little awkward socially. I don't have like thousands of friends. I can count my best friends on like two or three fingers. So I don't feel like I've sacrificed necessarily friendships or social time. It's not what the joy that I find in my best friends is more than necessarily trying to lose too much social time. And the joy that I find in building a business and building Neighborgood and running a team is for me something that is worth more than anything else. Outside of just having a family and raising my son with Kim, it's as much joy as I need. So I don't really feel that I've sacrificed anything because I get to do what I love every day anyway.
Okay. So it was not like a certain car you had to sell or a house you had to sell or something.
Yeah. Oh, I've had to bond a house or two once or twice, but
Okay. Yeah. And how do you do that with like your son? Like how do you manage like running the business with your wife, or how does she manage it? Like
for
is there
both of
some
us, we just prioritize them. I mean, we just make sure we're home by 5 o'clock, and I fetch him
okay.
from school on most days at 12. And on the weekends we spend every hour with him, and I'll likely take him to go
Yeah.
swim at Virgin Active after work today. And so it's just prioritizing time and just
Okay.
being as loving as possible, so that he just feels love all the
Yeah.
time.
That's beautiful. Probably also gonna be an entrepreneur at some point.
Maybe, but I've also found for him to be anything he wants.
Yeah.
I recognize a little bit of my wife in him because he's got uh, so much strength, and I recognize some of me in him as well.
Yeah. Maybe two more questions and then we
Cool.
make sure to yeah. What would you or how would it feel like if Neighborhood would disappear for you today? Like what would you feel relieved about, or what would you be like, like there would be something quite missing, or like you would be devastated?
Yeah, probably just start it again. Hey, I don't think like the future is inevitable, and our role in it is obviously to bring it to life. So
Yes.
um, I would obviously feel a little sad that 5 or 6 years worth of work had gone down the drain, but I
Mhm.
also feel that having had the experience, it's amazing how quickly scale can come when you get it right and you figured it out. So as long as I could hang on to the knowledge that I've had and the experiences that I've had over the last 5 or 6 years, I don't think we'd have a problem putting it together pretty quickly.
Okay. So what was that missing part you didn't have before? Like was it a so-called product market fit?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say the business was too complicated. It had too many layers. It was
Yeah.
food, work, wellness, resi, and if anything, life has taught me it's get one thing right. So it was just focus on getting that one thing right, which is what we're doing now, versus trying to get too many things right at the same time.
Yeah. But you operate in two markets, right? So how does that work? Like was it like a
So we
scaling?
have
Yeah.
we have strong teams on the ground in the US. So both in San Francisco and in New Haven,
Okay.
we have teams.
Yeah.
And then I spend a lot of time after 7 or 8 PM at night having calls with our teams and new landlords and other things.
Yeah. What was the decision that you also started over there in America?
The US multifamily market is the biggest in the world, and we
Mm.
felt like we'd built something that could move the needle in the biggest market in the world, and we wanted to be there. They also move quickly as, culturally, they move very fast. And so I like the US market. It's just a massive opportunity.
Okay. Then last question, what would you say is something you would like to see other founders talk more about, or like something that should be
I
more
think openness and honesty around ups and downs. I think like both personally and professionally, I think we go through life quite guarded as human beings, and we want to protect ourselves, and we think everyone, thinks badly of us for sharing things. And I'm not saying that we need to necessarily share the color of our underpants, but I think at the end of the day, just an openness and an honesty around what we're building and how to improve it could be more helpful for everyone.
hence I called this podcast
Uh,
here real talk because like I haven't seen it myself. Like there's a lot of like mask and like imposter and like
exactly, man. What you see
yeah.
on social, right?
Yes, exactly. And then people think, like, yeah, you can build that startup within one day, and then you're famous, and
Yes.
then you can read your book and
Yeah.
sit on the beach. Yeah, no, thank you so much. Is there something the community can do for you? Is there something we can
No,
put
just
in the show notes?
bring good to your world and have fun along the way. We talk
Yeah,
about that word good and neighbor goods. And it's not specific to real estate only. It's specific to the way we live and the kindness that we can
Wow,
share with everyone. So just bring that word into your life.
I will do my best. No, wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Ray. It was really cool to talk to you. Yes. All right. All the
Ciao.
best. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao. Thanks for listening. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.